Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. I see a lot of people joining the room. Welcome to a new session with Career Foundry, and thank you so much for joining. Before we start with the nice session we have prepared for you today, please go ahead on the right-hand side and share in the chat your name, where you base, and in what career in tech you are interested, because that would be really nice to know. My name is Belinda. I'm events manager here at Career Foundry, and today we are going to cover the topic of tips to ace your tech job interview. And for that, we have invited Susan Clark, who is an experienced career coach. It's not the first time that Susan is with us. She has hosted many sessions with us to guide people to make a successful career change. And we are super pleased to have you back to the channel, Susan. And today, this is a kind of a different format of event. Normally, we have a presentation and then we have the Q&A. And today, we also have prepared a mock interview for you in order to give you nice insights to learn how to face behavioral questions in job interviews. And I think you are going to enjoy it so much and learn so much. So let me introduce you to Career Foundry for those who are new to the channel. So Career Foundry is the career academy for aspiring tech professionals. We guide you from complete beginner to job-ready professional in UX, UI design, product management, data analytics, web development, and digital marketing, and help you land your first job in the field. You will be working very closely with expert mentors and career specialists to stay ahead of the job market. And you will be doing all of this in a flexible online setup and with a job guarantee at graduation. And also very important, our programs are AI enhanced. And a few things before we kick things off. This webinar, this session is being recorded, and we will send the recording out tomorrow via email. Also, after the presentation and the mock interview, we will have a Q&A. So please drop all of your questions in the Q&A tab, and we will answer them after the mock interview. And if you have any question regarding Career Foundry's programs, the best you could do is to book a call with one of our program advisors. They will answer all of your questions and even provide you with further information. And I won't take any longer. I leave you now 10 minutes with Susan to share some tips to prepare for the job interviews. And then I'll be back to do the fun part, and we will do a mock interview to show you how to address behavioral questions in your job interviews. Once again, thank you everyone for joining, and I see you in a bit. Susan, please take it over.
Thanks so much, Belinda. So welcome, everyone. I see that there's people all over the world, so it's really, really exciting that you all are joining us today. So the focus really here today is to help you prepare for job interviews, and specifically job interviews that are being done within the tech sector, within the tech industry. So I won't give a long introduction. I always joke and say when I do these that if you are interested in learning more about me, you're more than welcome to go creep on me on LinkedIn. I've been a career coach for several years now. I primarily help people that are changing their career, but I also help people that are interested in looking as well into just finding a job. But with that, let's actually jump into the good stuff. So what we're going to be covering today is kind of all things interview. So we're going to look at before the interview, what you need to be doing, what you need to look at and think about, but kind of preparation, if you will. We'll be looking at the different types of interviews, and then we get into how to structure kind of the typical way how to structure your interview answers. And then we'll get in actually to the mock interview where Belinda is going to be great and help us. And we'll go through a typical interview that you would see, just so you can kind of see applied learning in a sense on how that's done. And we'll cover some basics on kind of after interview, things you need to do to follow up. And we'll have a bit of time at the end for questions. So if a question happens to come up as we're moving along, don't be afraid to drop that in the Q&A section on the side of the webinar. So jumping in. So before the interview, what do you do? I find there's a lot of people that kind of are a bit confused on where to get started. So what I usually tell people first and foremost is research the company. When you go in and you don't really know enough about the company, it's a bit hard to tailor your answers to the questions that they're asking, because maybe you're giving examples that don't fit well with what they're doing. So learn about basic facts. What kinds of products and or services are they offering? What kind of industry do they service? So yes, they may be within the tech industry, but are they also something like e-commerce, or are they also providing some kind of software as a service? So these are some things to think about, what kind of industry that the company is within. Also, it's really good to know the company's mission and values, what they believe in, what they're working towards, along with the number of employees, because this will give you an idea more or less how they function to an extent, because big companies tend to have where you are working on one thing and one thing only. The smaller the company, traditionally, but not always, you'll tend to be more dynamic and do multiple different things. So it's good just to kind of have an idea of the number of employees there. It's also really good to try to dive into the department of the role which you're applying for. So just an example, if you're interested in development, you're going to look into the engineering department, the IT department of that company. So it's good to kind of just have an idea. You don't need to know exact numbers, but kind of have an idea of the size of the department, who's the head of that department, or at least who's the head of the team that you would be joining if you were offered that job at the end. And kind of trying to find and understand more of that department's goal. So you'll be able to talk more about that within interviews. Next, determining location. Is this interview in person or is it online? Now we're seeing more and more interviews, at least sometimes the first one, are being online. And then maybe sometimes after they're being in person. Nonetheless, you need to really make sure and be clear where that location is in advance. If it's in person, make sure you research in advance the address where it is and how long it will take you to get there. Remember, maybe you're looking this up a day before at midnight, and keep in mind, it may say 20 minutes, but if you have to leave during rush hour traffic at 8 in the morning, it may then take an hour. So be very mindful of what time you're leaving. And nonetheless, even if, let's say, the GPS was to say that it would take you 30 minutes, I always encourage people to give yourself a 15-minute leeway just in case something goes wrong, just in case something happens and that metro that you're taking into that job breaks down or has some kind of malfunction, or there's an accident on the road, so there's bad traffic. Just giving yourself a little bit more time there to work with. Online, make sure you don't do this last minute. I've talked to so many people where they had a bad start to an interview because it was a different software than they were used to. Maybe they're used to Zoom, but this company set it up to where they were going to sign in on Teams to do the interview. Whereas their Teams wasn't updated, they had to restart their computer, update Teams, and it looked really unprofessional that they turned up late and couldn't get everything working out. Same thing with mic and camera. So make sure you try to check that everything is up to date, minimal the day before at the latest, and then also try to join 15 minutes early. You don't have to turn on, you can turn on your camera and turn it off, but just try to go ahead and log in if possible, just to make sure everything, the tech on your side is working functionally. And also readying yourself. So a lot of people, I think this is very underrated. A lot of people go in and they feel like they cannot have a cheat sheet. By all means, you can have a notebook, whether it be online or in person, where you can jot down some notes. So I always tell people, if you know some things that you want to talk about because you have a great example of how you've used skills that apply to that job that they're hiring for, just write down keywords. The goal is not to write a whole script out, but the goal is just to write a few keywords to remind yourself to talk about that during the interview. And something that you can have, if you have two screens when you're online, you can have it on a next screen. If you're going to an in-person interview, it is 100% acceptable to have a notebook. And you can just say, oh, I'm just looking quickly down at my notes just to make sure that I'm not forgetting to mention something. That's 100% acceptable. So I always tell people you can create yourself a little cheat sheet to remind yourself, especially because interviews for many people are stressful. Also, dress to impress. If you're going for a tech job, this isn't necessarily extremely formal attire where you have a suit and tie, but you should look very presentable. You should have some type of nice shirt or a nice blouse. So keep in mind what you're going for and what the standard dress code is for that. I always tell people it's good to aim for business casual, but if it's something within a certain sector, maybe you're doing fintech, so finance, the intersection of finance and tech. Finance people tend to dress up a bit more. So maybe you would need to have a nice shirt, but also just put on a blazer over it. So use your best judgment, but definitely aim for business casual just because it's safe. Sometimes people will wear a t-shirt. Even then, your interviewer may wear a t-shirt, but it's better to be overdressed than underdressed, especially when you're making that first impression. So types of interviews. This is something that I find that a lot of people aren't sure about how this works and how this functions. So I really wanted to kind of explain the different types of interviews. You've maybe already went through an interview process where you had several different interviews and different interview rounds, but you didn't really understand the purpose of them or how and why they were structured in a certain way. So some of the common interview types that we have, you will have different rounds. I usually say on average, most jobs in tech do between 3 to 4 interview rounds. The 3 most common ones in this order are usually how they go. So a screening interview, this can also be known as a general or behavioral interview. And what this is it's almost always with a recruiter. And the goal for the recruiter is to help narrow down the list. They've collected all of these CVs, resumes they're looking through. They've now kind of determined, based on the keywords and based on what this person has said about themselves, they seem like they could be a good fit for this role that we're filling. Now let's call them in and interview them. The reason why we have this is because the hiring manager who is over that specific tech team, they simply don't have enough time to conduct 15 to 20 interviews to find the right person. So that's why we have this middle person, someone in recruitment, to kind of help sort through. The goal of the recruiter is to examine soft skills, which are really quite important. So soft skills could be communication skills, organization skills, collaboration skills. They're trying to find out what kinds of soft skills you have and how developed they are. And they're also trying to measure for company culture. Does it look like you would mesh well within their company culture? Then you have the technical interview. So the technical interview is usually the next step. Now, this is either conducted by a senior employee within the team or department that's hiring for that role, or the hiring manager, depending on how the company is set up. Oftentimes, it can be with the hiring manager. If the hiring manager is too busy, that's when you'll see this senior employee come in. The goal really with the technical interview is actually to make sure that what you've said, it is kind of in a sense, what you've said on your CV resume, it's making sure that that it's true, that you really do have those skills and knowledge that you say you do, and at the level at which is expected for that job. So they really want to make sure that you are up for the challenge of that role. We often see after that some type of team interview. And this is almost always led by the hiring manager of that particular team that is recruiting, with the other team members' participation. And the goal is really to kind of look at the holistic thing, what the recruiter has said about this person, what the interviewer got from the technical interview, and then looking then at this last, understanding the candidate's character, their strengths and weaknesses in relation to everyone else on the team, how that plays in, and looking at simply the compatibility between the team that they already have set now and this person that they're interviewing for. So structuring answers. So you may have heard of this. How to phrase this. When a recruiter or a hiring manager asks you a question, oftentimes they expect you to elaborate. They don't want just a piece of an answer. So if they ask you, oh, we saw that you were highly organized in your last role. How organized would you say you are? And you say, oh, I'm very organized. That's way too general. They're wanting you to go more in detail. So a good way to do this is by using the STAR method. There's tons of research out there on the STAR method. I will drop actually here in our chat some information, additional information about STAR, that you have that for later. But STAR basically stands for situation, task, action, and result. So when you think about answering the question, you'll think about it as storytelling. You're going to start, you're going to give context. So describe the situation you had to deal with in that particular previous role that you were doing. Next, focus on what you were given to do, either what you were assigned to do or what you were responsible for. After that, you're going to go into the action, what actually you did do. So what did you do to achieve something? What action did you take? Next, we look at the result. Out of all that, the action that you took afterwards, what happened? What came out of that? What kind of tangible outcome? Try to focus, if you can, to give numbers, to give metrics. But if you can't, that's okay. But you should explain something that came out of it. Even if you cannot come up with a metric, you have to come up with some kind of result to show that what you did provided value, essentially. You'll see this in action during our mock interview, so don't worry. I know it's a bit abstract at the moment. So now moving into the interview in action, we'll have Belinda come back and join us because we're going to go through common interview questions. And I'm going to ask these questions to Belinda, and she's going to answer them as if she is interviewing for a job. And after each question, I will provide feedback to Belinda so that you can kind of see how to tailor your own responses when you do these interviews. Wonderful. So, Belinda, are you ready to get started?
I'm very ready, Susan.
Good, fantastic. So we are starting with a question, everyone, that is one that is asked in every single interview. It may be phrased a bit differently, but it's always this question that's pretty much asked. And so we're starting with, tell me about yourself.
Very good. Okay, so I'm originally from Spain, and I moved 5 years ago to Berlin because I wanted to grow professionally and I wanted to work in an international environment. I have a bachelor's degree in event management and a MBA in virtual events. I worked for 3 years as event manager at a European organization where I organized more than 100 events in 3 different formats, online, hybrids, and in-person events. But the main focus were online and hybrid events. I work full-time in hybrid modality, and that means I was working most of the time from home. But I also had to do monthly trips to attend and coordinate some events. And thanks to this experience, I'm familiar with remote work, and I developed the skills to work in a remote environment. And also from that experience, I got introduced to the startup ecosystem because many of our external stakeholders were startups, especially from the tech industry. And that's why I got very interested in the tech sector, because it has a huge impact on people's life. Because we live in the era of information, digitalization, and technologies in our daily lives. We all use phones, computers, laptops for our work. And nowadays we do things that we were not able to do a few years ago, like buying clothes from your home, from your phone, studying a master, even attend an online event from your home, which I think this is great. And I also think that working in tech is very rewarding, because it offers a lot of opportunities to grow and also to learn new things. And I would like to continue my growth as event manager by gaining more experience in organizing online events in different formats, probably for bigger audiences, like organizing an online summit for hundreds of people, and also gaining more experience in the strategy side of events to contribute to the growth of a company that work in tech and be part of its communication. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So giving some feedback so you all kind of understand what Belinda has said here and why it's important. So talking about yourself is really important, because I know for some people they're confused when someone asks this question, tell me about yourself. How much do you say? How much do you talk about yourself? Keep in mind, sadly, they don't want to know your whole life story. They don't want to know where you were born, you were raised, where you grew up. They don't want to know how big your family is. It really is, when they say, tell me about yourself, they really want to know it in a context of, um, professionally who you are. So Belinda's done a really good example of explaining that, she moved to Berlin for growth opportunities, for professional growth opportunities, and that she wanted to work in an international environment. So we understand why she moved there. It was very strategic for her career. She then also gives some background about herself that is relatable to the job. So she explains her background, her educational background, that she has both a bachelor and master's, both relating to events, which is very important because of the fact that that's what she's applying for, is an events manager role. So then we also learn something about her, is that she already has experience working from home and she can do hybrid. And so this shows that she's quite independent and she can stay on topic and on focus doing her work and doesn't need to be within an office setting and being managed in person. So she mentions that. And she also explains her interest in the tech sector, why she wants to remain in the tech sector, why she wants to do events for the tech sector. And lastly, she finishes up really on a high note by explaining that she's applying for this role for growth. She wants to continue growing, and she even specifies specifically, because if you just say, I want to grow, this is a bit general. You really need to explain. And she does. She says she would love to work with bigger audiences, organize events that bring in more audiences, and she wants to look more at the strategic side of organizing events in order to help a company grow itself. So we understand really clearly her background, her experience, her qualifications, and what she's looking forward to going forward in her career. So great job with that, Belinda.
Thank you.
I'm just dropping in the chat something you all can save. This is how to answer the question, some more information about how to answer the question, tell me about yourself, because I know it's not always the easiest question to answer. So moving on to the next question here is, what are your strengths?
That's a really good question. Okay. When I think of things that I'm really good at, I am very good at organizational skills. I work with timelines for every project, depending on the complexity of the project. I focus on meeting the deadlines for every phase. And as event management is very collaborative, normally the deadlines doesn't depend on me, so I try to have some checkups with the teams in order to see the status of the projects and see what are their priorities and what other tasks need help. For example, for online events, I usually have a window of 6 weeks for every project, depending on the complexity I've mentioned before. So I like to have a kickoff meeting, and then 3 weeks after, for example, in the middle of the timeline, have another checkup. And then it's also really important to have at least 2 weeks for promotion of the event. So I really make sure that this timeline is done. Additionally to that, I also use a project management tool to assign tasks and to inform the whole team about the status of the projects. Also, I use different techniques to organize myself, like blocking time in my calendar to have focused time and don't get distracted by other tasks. And that helped me a lot to don't get overwhelmed with the workload and have a good coordination with the team and deliver good events. Another strength I have is teamwork. It's really important to move the project forward. And for that, I always try to have an open communication with my team by asking feedback. And also I share my thoughts and question when I have the chance. I especially like to have sync communication. So I use the time that I have in meetings, but I also respect others' time. So I also use async communication when it's needed, or propose a quick meeting if the calendar allows it. And I also offer my help within my capabilities, and I love learning new things. So if I have to help in other tasks that are not within my responsibilities, I'm totally willing to that, like designing banners or sharing content on social media. And another big strength that I would say is budgeting. I have I was in charge for 2 years in my previous job for budgeting. I pay extreme care to this. And what I do is to check the budget we have for the year and for the month. And from that, I calculate the number of events we can hold weekly or monthly. And also, it's very important to keep track of the budget. So what I do is to document the approximate budget in advance. And if we don't fit that budget, we try to look for new alternatives, like looking for event formats that have less cost, or relocating some budget. And I think it's very important, because if you plan ahead the budget, you will be able to host all of the events that you have planned for the year. And yeah, those are my biggest strength: organizational skills, teamwork, and budgeting.
Good, good, good. And I'm glad I see that someone in the chat has asked a question that was very, very relevant about how long should the answers be? Because as you saw, this was a bit of a longer answer. So keep in mind, you might end up losing your interviewer if you talk a little bit too much. So we did learn from this, because I'm taking notes along, which an interviewer would do. So you have that Belinda was talking about her organizational skills. She talks about, as a part of her organizational skills, that she creates timelines and she meets deadlines, and that as a part of that, she is collaborating with the team in order to stay on top of the priority and the status of what's going on with each individual project. And then she even gives an example of how she uses organizational skills, which is super important. And she even named some of the tools she's using, which goes to show that she actually is using it. Keep in mind, in an interview, a lot of people will say something like, my strengths are organizational skills, teamwork, and budgeting, but that's all they say. This is just you saying something. When you provide context, this makes it more believable. And especially with Belinda providing example of how she organizes herself, it shows that she really does have organizational skills. And then even listing some of the tools that help her stay organized even adds more credibility to what she's saying. She mentions about teamwork, also similar to organization. She mentions how she works with a team. She does syncs, so she does meetings with people. If it's not possible, that she's also organizing async communication, and that she is and that she's offering help to the team within her capacity. So this is showing about really how she's prioritizing teamwork. Next, she goes into budgeting, and it's really great because she explains her process of budgeting, how she is budget focused, and how she already lays out and starts with budgeting in mind before she even jumps into planning all the events. We might have lost her for a moment when you're listening, thinking, oh, wow, this is a lot that she's talking about. But she does try to sum it up. She comes back at the end and says, so my top strengths are organizational skills, teamwork, and budgeting. So that's great always to go back, because you do try to add context, but you might lose people. You don't necessarily have to give um, you don't necessarily have to give 3 strengths, but you should always give more than one. So if you find that your explanations are getting a bit long, or you think that they're a bit long, you can just maybe mention 2, and you can just say, I believe my top 2 strengths are this, because of course we all have lots of different strengths. It's not going to be limited to 2 to 3 or even 4. So usually what I say is aim between 2 and 3. So if you feel like it's getting too long, maybe consider sticking to 2. And it's always great, like Belinda did at the end, doing a circle back around to reminding them what those strengths are. Rule of thumb, how long should this answer be? It's great to keep this answer between 2 to 3 minutes. So it's really great that you may take around 2 minutes. If it gets closer to 3, it's okay, but try not to go over 3 minutes, because you start boring the interviewer. If you do not have that much experience in your past background, keep in mind that you will have past experiences, maybe from your school experience, maybe from volunteer experiences. You don't have to use it from just other jobs that you did. Maybe it's strengths that you displayed from playing sports. So there's lots of different examples that you can use. I see also someone mentioned she didn't mention about weaknesses. That's because I didn't ask her about weaknesses. Make sure that you do not provide answers to questions that they do not ask. Don't run in and say, these are my strengths, but my weaknesses are. But you are right to make that, bring this up, because a common question that comes after, which we will now go into, is weaknesses, because they do go hand in hand. But don't try to answer something before it's asked. Always wait to make sure it's being asked. So
Wonderful.
yeah, so on with that.
Sorry, Susan, because I have a question now
Mhm.
that I think might be relevant for the audience. Because I didn't mention any tool, because we are in a mock interview, but would be relevant using the tool, when explaining the skills you have, the strength you have.
Yeah. So, for example, one of the things that you mentioned was teamwork. So, you could mention that you use Slack a lot as a part of teamwork, in order to share documents that you're working on with teammates, or that you use Google Drive to collaborate on working docs together. So, by all means, you can mention some of the common tools you're using. If it's not a popular tool, there's no need to mention it, but if it is something that is widely used in the industry, it's great to mention that you do know that. And especially if they asked for a certain tool and you know it, if they ask for that within the job advert, it's great to talk about that, mention that tool in your interview.
Nice. Thank you.
So,
okay, ready for the next one.
Yes. So now moving into the next one is, what are your weaknesses?
Okay, so I'm aware of the importance of communication skills for event managers, especially speaking in public. And that is very nerve-wracking for me when I have to speak in front of an audience. And at the beginning of my career, I had to moderate a panel discussion, and suddenly I got frozen and I couldn't deliver the question as they were planned. And it was a disaster, obviously, but instead of stepping back, I took the advice from my colleagues, and I took a course for public speaking, where I learned how to deal with those situations and gain more confidence when I'm speaking in public. And by taking that course, I learned some technique to calm my nerves. And since then, even though I still get nervous, I prepare myself for every moderation, meeting, or presentation that I have. And I do that by researching the topic that we will cover. And I prepare the agenda with the talking points that I would like to discuss in a document. And I also prepare some questions that are relevant for the audience. And I also like to prepare my moderation 1 or 2 days before to practice the conversation. And what I learned from this experience was that preparation is the key for a good performance, and not just in event moderation, but also to have an effective communication within your team and with all stakeholders. So yeah, one of my weaknesses is that speaking in public, but I'm working on that to improve it.
Good. Something to say is that you should give a real weakness, a weakness that would be related sort of to the job. But the important thing to do is show how you're overcoming it. Also, something to mention is notice that I use plural. What are your weaknesses? But notice how Belinda only focused on one. You don't want to go off explaining a whole bunch of your weaknesses, because this is going to scare the recruiter off. So if you say, oh yeah, I'm bad at public speaking, I'm also very disorganized, and I have a hard time working with others on projects just because I find I get things done faster by myself. True, if you say all of those things, you did answer the question that the recruiter asked, but the recruiter is not actually really wanting to know about your weaknesses. They ask this question, but they're actually trying to figure out, one, are you aware of what your weaknesses are? And two, do you know how to handle your own weaknesses? Because companies often don't have time to fix your individual issues. They are a company. They're hiring you because they have a need. They need you to come in and help them and do something. So if you don't have self-awareness about your own shortcomings, or if you don't know how to improve it yourself, that means they would then have to find the time to do that. And they often don't want to do that. So Belinda here has answered really well, because she explained that she discovered that she was very nervous when it came to public speaking, but she knew it was very important when it came to events. And I love how she even gives an example about how one time she froze and she got extremely nervous, froze, the event was a disaster. But instead of just shutting down, she then decided, okay, no, I'm going to take the advice of colleagues. I'm going to take a class in relation to public speaking, and I'm going to get better at this. And so she worked on this in order to do that. And the main thing is to show how you're working to improve something. And she even goes into detail about what she's doing now to still improve. Even after the course, she explains that she preps in advance. She spends 1 to 2 days to prep in advance. And so that's a great way to answer. So yes, don't give more than one weakness. Also, it needs to be a real weakness in relation to the career. And please don't say that you're a perfectionist. Recruiters hate this. They think it's a cop-out. They think it's not a real weakness. You really need to show insight. I don't care if you're a perfectionist or not. You can think we all have We all have weaknesses. You can come up with something other than perfectionism. Me, for example, I can go ahead and tell you I'm extremely disorganized. If you were to see how I organize stuff, it's madness. So think about something that you can mention that is a real weakness, but explain how you're trying to overcome that. Oh, wait. Already jumping to the next thing because I noticed about the time. So next question that is very common. Why do you want to work for this company?
There are several reasons why I would love to work for your company. First, I use your services and I love it. And I think it's very innovative and unique in the market. I also had the chance to meet a few people that works in the company and told me about your company culture, that you care a lot about the professional development of the employees and you offer a professional budget. Also, as mentioned at the beginning of this interview, I'm very interested in working in a international environment. And with you, I will be able to do that because you work for a global audience and you work for the main market of the world. And that would make me learn so much. And also, little but is very important. I saw that your company is committed to sustainability. And this is something that I really care about. So it's one of my life values. And I would love to contribute to that with the company I work for. So yeah, those are the reasons why I would love to work for your company.
Great job answering this. We did keep it general, so it was a bit hard for Belinda to answer it because we did not take a specific company in mind. So she had to be a bit general, saying that she uses their services. But for example, if you are working for, or if you're going for an interview at a specific company, instead of saying that you use their services, explain. If you're going for Netflix, you would say, oh, I love Netflix. I've actually been a subscriber for 10 years now. I really believe in what you're doing. You completely revolutionize the way that we watch series and movies. So try to get a bit more specific, but Belinda gave for this, because we kept it general, she gave you the right idea. You can use it that you use their services, but that's not the only thing that she gave. So if you're not using their services, it's okay. You can focus on the other things that Belinda mentioned as well. Maybe you've heard good things about their company from people who work there. Maybe you saw that they have great ratings on Glassdoor. So people are saying that it's a great place to work. Maybe you've heard that they have a great company culture and that they treat their people well, or that they have a learning budget and they try to encourage all of their employees to grow and to grow professionally. Something else that's really great to mention is if your values align with their values. So we heard Belinda mention that she was very interested in the company because of their sustainability focus. And that's something that's very important to her. So look to see if they share some of your same values. And that's something else that you can mention on why you are working, why you're working for that, why you want to work for that company. So next question, Belinda, tell us, describe a challenge that you faced at work and how did you overcome it?
Okay, so I remember one day we have organized an event with an important speaker, but 3 hours before the speaker said that it was not able to attend the meeting for personal reasons. And so what I had to do is to inform all the people registered that we had to postpone the event for a future date. We had to find a more suitable date to reschedule the webinar. So the first thing I did was to inform my team about this reschedule, find a new date in the event's calendar, and also sent an email to all people registered, informing about this change, informing about the new dates, and also apologizing about it and explaining the reason why. And after that, I rescheduled the event on the platform, and we were able to host the events. And also, we even got to increase the number of people registered, and that was really good at the end. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Amazing. Great with that. So you might not notice if you're not familiar with it, since I just introduced it earlier, but Belinda here used the STAR method, which I previously introduced. And it's really great whenever you're giving examples to use the STAR method, because it's an easy way to do storytelling. So it's an easy way to explain to the recruiter all through the process. So Belinda was talking about a specific situation. And so she explained, so as a part of the STAR, so as a part of S and STAR situation, she started explaining the context. And a speaker was not able to do the presentation because personal reasons came up and they had to cancel for the day. So then going on to task, what did she need to do? So what her duties and responsibilities is that then she needed to inform all of these people that the event was going to be postponed, that it wouldn't be happening that day. So then as a part of that was her duty. This was her responsibility. So looking at the A and STAR, so action. So as a part of that responsibility, she informed the team about needing to reschedule. She looked to find a new date, organized a new date, and explained to everyone going on why they were needing to change this and organize this. And then last, the R that comes into STAR, the result, she explains about the fact that they were able to find a time, schedule the event on the platform where they could have the host come and present. And as a result, they even increased the number of registrations. So they even got better registration numbers than they did previously from this situation. So this is an example of going through and explaining and giving an answer within the STAR method. So really, really great work there.
Thank you.
And our last question is, do you have any questions for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I have a few questions that I would like to know. First, what are the opportunities to grow within my role as event manager? What is the structure of the team I will be part of? Also, I would like to know what are the day-to-day responsibilities of this position and who I will be reporting to. And the last thing I would like to know is if you could confirm the days of vacation that you offer. Yeah, those are my questions. I could help you to recap all of them.
That's okay. I think I've got them. But what I want to do, everyone, is I want to go back to explain the different types of interviews. So in case that you might not have caught them all, I want you to, I will start with the first question that she asked, which is opportunities to grow as an event manager, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Belinda wanted to know, what are the opportunities to grow as an event manager? If this is a screening interview, you will be talking to a recruiter and an HR professional. They will not know about growth opportunities because maybe they don't know enough about marketing and events within their company. They're really good and know about recruitment, but they don't know how the marketing event team is structured. So they're not going to be able to tell Belinda how she can grow. So this is not a question that you should ask during a screening interview. This is a question that you can ask at an end of a technical interview or a team interview, because those are with people that are the lead, the hiring manager, so the person that will be the person that the role reports to, or within that department of within that department where you're applying for that role. So do not ask that kind of question in a screening interview where the person that's talking to you is a recruiter. Belinda's next question was, what is the structure of the team that I will be a part of? Again, this is not a question that is good for a screening interview, for the general behavioral interview with a recruiter, because again, they don't know details about that role. They don't know details about that team and the structure of the team, or even the day-to-day requirements of that role. So again, this is a question to save for the technical interview and for a team interview. The other question that Belinda was asking, what are the day-to-day responsibilities of this position, and who would I be reporting to? So a recruiter may be able to tell you, well, they will know who you would report to, the person and the person's title, but they won't necessarily know the day-to-day responsibilities. They'll be able to tell you pretty much the same that is on the job advert that you saw when you applied, but they won't know further than that. So keep in mind, any kind of questions related to the role itself, leave those for later questions for the hiring manager or the team. When asking about vacation days, this is something that you can ask a recruiter, because this is a part of HR and this is a part of recruitment and onboarding, but tread softly. This might not be the best question to ask right away, because they may think, wow, this person's already asking about vacation time and they haven't started yet. How serious are they about working? Unfortunately, that's really sad to say, because we do deserve vacation time. We do deserve time off, but it may give that recruiter a more negative perception of you. You can do two things. You can say, I don't care. I don't want to work for a company that would take it like that. Or you could say, that's okay. I don't need to bring it up now. This is something that I can ask in a later interview. So some types of questions that I encourage people to ask are questions like company culture, what kinds of model of working do they have? Is it a hybrid model? Is it an in-person model? Is it 100% work from home? You can ask them what kinds, if they have any kind of employee company programs, like mentorship programs. You can ask them about any kind of company-wide objectives and initiatives. One of my favorite questions to ask recruiters in a screening interview is, what do you like most about this company? So that gives you kind of an idea. Maybe they tell you that they really like that it's extremely structured. And maybe that's great because you love structure. Or maybe you think, oh, maybe this isn't a good place for me. I don't really like structure. I like to kind of be able to change. So some questions, you can check out this article that I'm dropping in the chat. This is a good section where you can look at questions that you can ask during an interview. Just keep in mind, any questions about the hiring process and the company, those go to recruiters. Any questions about the job, those go to the hiring manager.
Wonderful, Susan. I hope the audience has enjoyed the mock interviews so much, and they have enjoyed it as much as we did. I know it's a kind of fun situation, but the main goal of the mock interview was for you to learn the insights and then apply it for the role you are applying and you are looking for to land. And what we were speaking about question is important that they know you, but also it's important that you know the company. So never be afraid to ask questions. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, absolutely. As a thing as well as a follow-up, definitely keep in mind to send a thank you email to show that you appreciate that they have taken the time to organize and set up the interview and speak with you. This really goes a long way with how they perceive you going forward. We have a few minutes. I'm happy to stay a few minutes over, Belinda, if there's any questions that you see that people have that may be to be answered.
Sure. Please now, if you still have any question, now is your chance to ask anything regarding job interviews or other career concerns to Susan. That's why she's here. And now we have a question from Lauren. Please keep them in the Q&A tab so I can keep track of them, or if not, we can review the chat now in a bit. So Lauren is asking, what are some ways skills are examined in the tech interview? Some ways skills are examined in tech interviewed.
Yeah. So usually what they're doing when they're doing an interview, what they're trying to see is they're examining skills by, if you're just saying you have a skill, it's harder for them to believe. So it's very, very important to always try to give an example of how you used that skill in the past. So you've seen this with Belinda when she was explaining some of her answers, how she explained in a previous time, how she collaborated with a team, with fellow teammates. Then if it's something like measuring soft skills, it's a bit hard sometimes to explain that. But how they measure that is that they're looking to see how you react, how you show up on camera. Do you show up on time? This means you're punctual. Do you look professional? This means that you understand context. So you understand how to show up and be presentable and be professional. They're also judging sometimes with soft skills on how quick you are to be able to adapt if they maybe ask you a follow-up question on one of the questions that they've asked you, how quickly you can respond and adjust accordingly. So they will look to see how you show up on the interview and your interactions and mannerisms. But that's not an end-all be-all. They also will ask you questions to have you explain, and it's always important to give examples.
Nice. I guess it's kind of different for soft skills and hard skills, because for the hard skills, you actually can be tested, like for designers and software developers. You can have those kind of testing in the job interview through the interview process.
And you do see that there's sometimes two parts of a technical interview. You have a technical interview where you go in and they ask you very technical focused questions related to what you are interviewing for. One of the common things we see for designers, what's the difference for you between UI and UX? For developers, they may say, if we were to tell you, you need to design a website, a quick one-page website within 3 days, walk us through your process. Tell us which programs, software, languages, etc. that you would use. So they will ask different kinds of questions like this, or sometimes they actually give you some kind of technical take-home challenge to be tested on.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you, Lauren and Susan. Let's check. We have a question How can we follow up or thank the hiring manager if we don't have their direct contacts?
Yeah, so great question. So usually you will have the contact information for the recruiter, because the recruiter has set up the interview with you. So always make sure you thank the recruiter for setting up the interview. For a screening interview, make sure to send them an email. Then when you go to the next stage and you have the interview set up with a hiring manager, you can then again send another email thanking the recruiter for setting up the interview between you and the hiring manager. But during your interview, you can ask the hiring manager for their email address. You can say, "Oh, do you mind if I get your business card?" That's an easy way to be able to have their email address, is if you ask during the interview for their business card. If it's online, you can ask them for their email. If you forget or if they don't provide it, it's fine. You can just email the recruiter and ask them, can they forward this email on to the hiring manager, so that you can thank them essentially through the recruiter.
Would it be ideal to reach out to them via LinkedIn to thank them if you find them on LinkedIn?
I am still debating about this because I have talked to hiring managers and recruiters, and sometimes they find it weird because they think we haven't yet decided who we're going to hire, and this person's already trying to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you can send a message to them without sending them a connection request, but not everyone allows that on their profile, then you can do it. Sometimes people leave on their LinkedIn profile. If you go to the contact section, they actually leave their contact information open. So sometimes you can find their email publicly. So I would still recommend trying to contact them through email rather than LinkedIn, because they seem to be weirded out when you do an interview, and they're not sure if they want to hire you yet.
Nice.
So this is what I've heard just when I've talked to different people hiring. So it's up to you, but some find it weird, some don't seem to care.
Okay. Nice. We have a question from Kavita. How to mention career break in interview?
Yeah, absolutely. So you do not have to mention it. If they ask about it, you can. Or if you mention it, the time to mention it would be mentioning it in the tell me about yourself, but it always needs to be within a positive light. So I would love in a perfect world that it would be socially acceptable just to realize you want to take a break, and you sat on a couch for 3 months just to relax and refresh. Recruiters and hiring managers can sometimes find this as lazy. So it's really important to explain if you have a gap, explain why. Explain, oh, like it was time off for maternity leave and taking care of a child, taking care of a sick parent, or maybe it was that you were gaining additional education. If it was for traveling, explain what you gained during traveling. But you don't have to bring it up yourself. You can wait until they ask you about it.
I'm mindful of the time, so let's take a couple of more questions. We received so many now, Susan.
Yeah.
Bethany is asking, any tips if you get asked a question you weren't prepared and feel totally stumped?
So yes, definitely. You can take a minute. We all have been thrown off before. Even now, myself included, who this is my job, to coach and help people with it. Sometimes there's just timing. It comes out from left field. You're just not expecting it, and you just blank. Don't panic. That's the number one thing. You can even say, that's a great question. Give me a minute to think about it. In your head, you may think that this minute that you're taking feels like 10 minutes, but I promise you it does not. And more often than not, the recruiter, the hiring manager, are actually thankful for the pause because that gives them time to think about how the interview's gone thus far. And they're, of course, taking notes on your interview. So that gives them a minute to kind of fill in some additional thoughts that they've had throughout your interview. So it is completely okay to take a minute to think about it. If you're not sure if you've understood the question, you can repeat to them, not the exact question, repeat how you feel as though you've understood it. And you say, I've understood your question as blah, blah, blah. Is this correct? Have I understood you correctly? And when they say yes, then great. Then you can take another minute to think about what you want to say and continue. Or if they say no, not exactly, then you can say, oh, do you mind rephrasing it? That's not a problem at all. And it's not, the main thing is don't freak out because it's not at all the end of the world. You didn't bomb the interview just because you didn't understand their question and you asked them to rephrase it differently. So number one thing, don't panic, and you can take a pause.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's very important also because the brain actually needs some time to process all the information. So it's totally fine if you take a few seconds or
Yeah.
a certain time just to think about, because you need to think about. So
yeah, absolutely.
totally good. Thank you, Susan. I would like to close the Q&A with a very interesting question. I think you are going to give a nice insight in this one. Miriam is asking, if I have a disability, can you disclose and ask how they can support you in your role?
Yes, really great question, Miriam. So this is very hit or miss. And the reason why I say this is some companies can be very scared off by this, and some companies don't even bat an eyelash and they're not concerned at all. And so, what I usually say is kind of use your best judgment. So, if it is a disability where you are on dialysis and you have to go for several hours once or twice a week, and you're going to be missing a lot of time from work, maybe you don't want to say that right off the bat. But I also leave it up to people and explain, do you want to work for a company that doesn't support you or are willing to work with you? Something about me that can be seen, I guess, as a learning disability is that I have both dyslexia and ADHD. And we now are talking more and more about being neurodivergent and if we should talk about this in a work setting and talk about accommodations. One of the things about it is it's up to you if you want to tell them. Some companies have yet to understand what some of these things mean and what they entail. So if you disclose it, it's important to kind of set the expectation of what that means for the company. So if your disability is going to impact them a lot, you don't want to freak them out. But if you explain you have this certain disability, but it's not a big deal, maybe you just need certain accommodations to where because you have diabetes, you might have low blood sugar sometimes. And for this reason, you might need to stop during a meeting and eat something really quick, just eat a snack. So it really depends on the situation. You can go with your gut feeling, but I always say make sure that you are providing a solution. If you tell them about disclosing it, don't ask them how they can support you in your role, because they maybe have never worked with someone with diabetes or someone on dialysis or someone that is neurodivergent. They don't know how to support you. You will then need to say, this may happen, but if it's okay, if I can have XYZ as support, then it's not going to be a problem at all within the work setting. So you have to know what you need and ask them if they can accommodate that. But that's like a whole nother topic. I do talk about that a lot. So if you are interested in talking about that, or knowing more about that, disclosing disabilities or not during an interview, you're welcome to shoot me a message on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing this. And it's important to speak about this topic. Okay, that was the time for the Q&A and for today's session. I would like to share a few things before we close. First, thank you so much, Susan. It was really fun. Also, thank you to everyone for posting your questions. And I really hope that you got the insights to prepare yourself really well for your job interviews. We wish you all the best. We saw many people here today. They have already their job interviews. So good luck with that. Also, I saw we have so many people interested in career change into data analytics and UX design and more fields. And I would like to mention a special offer we are offering this month. Career change scholarship worth up to 18% of the full price of our career change programs. And if you would like to receive more information about and claim that scholarship, you just simply click the sticky note that you can see at the top of the chat and book a call with one of our program advisors. There is no commitment, it's a free call, and they will give you all the information that you need to know and all the support you will be receiving with our programs. And yeah, that was the time of today's session. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And thank you, Susan, for the nice session we have today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining. See you next time.
See you next time. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.